Welcome to the deep dive.
It's great to be here, ready to dig into some pretty hefty source material today.
Absolutely. Today we are plunging right into a foundational text. We're looking at excerpts pulled directly from the new Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook, the 2024 version.
hmm
You shared this, well, stack of knowledge with us, and our mission really is to cut through all that complexity and pull out the really important nuggets, the key knowledge and insights.
Yeah, think of this as, well, maybe your shortcut, your way to really get the core mechanics, the flow, how characters get built in this latest version. We're not just reading rules, we're looking for the why, you know, the thinking behind it, the little details that make this revision different.
Exactly. We know you probably follow the hobby, so we're not going to spend ages defining like what a dungeon is.
Right.
Instead, we'll unpack the real basics, what the game is, fundamentally, how you play it, turn by turn, the engine underneath it all, dice and abilities, and then how those three main pillars, interaction, exploration, combat, how they actually work with those rules.
And we'll touch on the gear, definitely. Magic items, too. The basics of casting spells. Maybe even a quick look at the multiverse where all this stuff happens.
Our goal here is to give you a really clear picture of what's inside this book, how the game actually plays out, and hopefully highlight some surprising bits, some useful perspectives for your own games.
Sounds good. You've got the material. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. So let's start right at the beginning. The source material does this too, the game's origin, its legacy. It's pretty significant. The intro here mentions it started 50 years ago.
That's right. Way back in the 1970s, Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson, they really created something new, didn't they? It was make-believe, sure, but it fused that storytelling with rules, structure.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just telling a story, it was playing through it. The outcome wasn't fixed. That was the key.
And players weren't just following some script. They made their own characters, these unique fantasy heroes. Then they teamed up, went on quests together, faced challenges, made choices that actually, mattered. That cooperative, player-driven thing was there from the start.
Absolutely central. And also central right from the beginning was the dungeon master, the DM. They're the world builder, the narrator, painting the scene, But also the referee, interpreting rules, playing all the other characters, the NPCs, doing everything to challenge the players, but also, crucially, to delight them. It's a tricky balance. Requires prep and thinking on your feet.
And the game's changed a lot over those decades, hasn't it? Many additions, countless creators adding their touch designers, writers, artists. It's really a living thing.
Totally. And this 2024 Player's Handbook, it builds directly on the very popular 2014 edition. The introduction calls this new one a revised salute to everyone involved over the years. Players, contributors, it's acknowledging the feedback, from veterans and new players alike.
There's a quote here right at the start from lead designer Jeremy Crawford. It really sets the philosophical tone, I think. He talks about the origin, sharing stories, and then he says, and this feels like a key insight into the current design. I invite you to embark on such adventures anew. Share as much laughter as you can with your friends. Use only the rules that serve your fun, and always follow your group's bliss.
That last bit, wow. Use only the rules that serve your fun, and always follow your group's bliss.
Yeah.
It's right there, page 1 of the main rulebook, explicit permission. The rules are a framework, yeah, they're a guide. But the shared experience, the fun you're having together, the story you build, that's the real goal. It honors the 50 years, but it tells you straight up, aim for fun, not rigid rule following, just because.
It really hammers home that it's a human experience, collaborative, happening around a table, with rules helping it along.
Okay, so moving from those roots to, actually playing, what does it look like? The sources give a pretty clear idea of a typical session.
Right. At its core, you're playing these imaginary adventurers, exploring fantasy worlds. We know the drill, talking to people, fighting monsters, solving puzzles, finding treasure. But the source highlights something crucial. It's cooperative. Players are there to help each other have fun. You're building that story together for your group.
Yeah, that cooperation is vital. You're not usually competing against each other. Not really even competing against the DM most of the time. You're a team. The source even suggests watching games online to learn. And it specifically says, pay attention to how players work together to make it fun for everyone at the table.
The source talks about an adventure as the basic unit of play, like a series of encounters that make up a story.
And those encounters can be all sorts of things. Exploration, social stuff, combat, traps, mysteries. Sometimes one game session might be a whole story start to finish. People call that a one-shot. Great way to try things out.
But usually, right, sessions link together into bigger adventure that might take a few nights to finish.
Mm.
And then multiple adventures can link into a campaign.
Exactly. That TV show analogy works pretty well. The campaign is the whole series arc. Long-term goals, recurring characters, and adventure is like a season within that. Its own goal, its own climax. And a single session, that's like an episode, a piece of the story.
And adventures can be homebrewed by the DM, or they can be published ones. Like the examples in the book use Curse of Strahd. These provide settings, NPCs, villains, challenges, all ready to go.
Campaigns can use those published settings too, like the Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk, or be totally DM-made, or, a mix. The key thing is it's the same group of adventurers sticking together, growing, changing through these connected stories.
So whether it's a quick one-shot or this huge multi-year campaign, the basic loop of how you play stays the same. The source outlines this pattern. It works for talking, exploring, fighting, everything.
Yeah, it's a really simple 3-step cycle, repeats constantly. Step 1, the DM describes the scene, sets the stage, right? Where are you? What's around? Who's there? Paints the picture.
Then, step 2. The players describe what their characters do. This is where you act. Based on the scene, what does your character do? The source mentions characters often stick together, but maybe they split up a bit. One watches the door, one checks the shelves, one talks to the innkeeper.
And outside of combat, the DM makes sure everyone gets a chance to chime in to act. In combat, it gets more structured. Turns. We'll get to that.
Which brings us to step 3. The DM narrates the results. What happened because of what your characters did?
If it's easy, like walking across the room, opening an unlocked door, the DM just says it happens, describes a new situation. But if it's tricky or the outcome's uncertain and it's, interesting for the story, persuading a guard, jumping a chasm, hitting a monster, that's when the DM might say, okay, roll the dice.
Ah, the dice. Knew they'd show up soon. But the key is step 3, the results. That changes things, which leads right back to step 1, the DM describing the new scene.
Exactly. Describe, act, narrate results. New description, new actions, new results. It's the engine. Drives the game forward, moment by moment.
And while that loop is always there, the source mentions that sometimes, especially combat, it gets more structured. Define turns and order.
Right. And the sources spend a lot of time on the mechanics behind that loop. Dice and the 6 core abilities. These are the numbers that make the difference between success and failure.
Dice are obviously huge. They bring in that randomness, right? Deciding if your amazing leap works or if you faceplant, if your spell hits. That uncertainty, that's where a lot of the excitement and the unexpected twists come from.
Definitely. You'll use various dice polyhedrals named by their size. D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, and the big one, the D20. The source explains notation like 3D8 plus 5, means roll 3 D8s, add them up, add 5. Simple enough.
And percentile dice, the D100. Usually 2 D10s, right? 1 for 10s, 1 for 1s.
Yep. Roll a 30 and a 6, that's 36. Roll a 0, 0, and a 0, that's 100. Used for certain charts or effects. But at the heart of resolving actions are the 6 core abilities. Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. They measure your character's basic physical and mental traits.
What's a typical score, like for a normal person?
10 or 11 is considered average human level. Adventurers, they're usually exceptional. Scores often go up to 20, sometimes higher with magic or special features, but 30 is generally the absolute peak. Low scores are down in the single digits, with one being, well, extremely impaired.
And each score has a modifier attached. That's the important bit for rolls.
That's the number you use most, derived right from the score. A 10 or 11 gives you a +0 modifier. An 18, 19 gives +4. A 20 gives +5. Go down to a score of 3, that's a dynamic 4 modifier. It's this modifier you add to your dice rolls.
And these scores, these modifiers, they feed into the main mechanic for figuring things out, the D20 test.
The D20 test. Yeah, that's how you resolve most uncertain actions. It's a pretty clear 3-step thing. 1, roll a D20, just one 20-sided die. 2, add your modifiers. This is where your character sheet comes in. Add the relevant ability modifier, maybe your proficiency bonus if you're trained, and any other bonuses or penalties from spells, features, the situation. 3, compare the total to a target number. Your roll plus all modifiers gets compared to a number set by the rules or the DM. If your total equals or beats that target, you succeed. Simple as that.
And that target number has different names depending on the context.
Exactly. For an ability check or a saving throw, it's the difficulty class, or DC. For an attack roll trying to hit someone, it's the target's armor class, or AC. The DM tells you the target number and if you hit it.
This is also where advantage and disadvantage come in. Huge mechanic.
Oh yeah, key rule. Really streamlines things. If things are working in your favor, you get advantage. If they're working against you, disadvantage. If you have either, you roll 2 d20s instead of 1. With advantage, you take the higher result. With disadvantage, you take the lower result. Then you add modifiers as usual.
And the source is clear on how they interact, right? They don't stack up.
Very important point. Multiple sources of advantage. Still just roll 2 dice, take the higher. Same for disadvantage. And if you have any advantage and any disadvantage on the same roll, they just cancel out completely. Doesn't matter how many of each you have. One of each they negate. You just roll 1 d20 like normal.
So 3 things giving me advantage, 1 thing giving me disadvantage, they cancel. Just a normal roll.
Exactly that. Keeps it clean. Advantage, disadvantage, or neither. No complex math, stacking little pluses and minuses.
What about rerolls, like heroic inspiration? How does that work with advantage, disadvantage?
Good question. Heroic inspiration is mentioned. You might get it from the DM, maybe for cool role-playing. You spend it to reroll any die right after you roll it, but you have to use the new roll. The source clarifies. If you have advantage or disadvantage, you roll 2 d20s. If you use heroic inspiration, you pick one of those 2 dice and reroll just that one.
And you can only hold 1 heroic inspiration at a time.
Yeah.
So that d20 test roll, add modifiers, maybe advantage, disadvantage, compared to target, that's the core engine.
Building right on that d20 test, the sources break down the 2 main ways you use those ability scores and modifiers: ability checks and saving throws.
Okay, let's tackle ability checks first. What are they for?
An ability check is basically you trying to do something where the outcome isn't certain, and that uncertainty matters to the story. Using your character's talent, their training, their raw ability to overcome some challenge. Examples given are like forcing a stuck door, picking a lock, charming a crowd, figuring out a puzzle. The DM asks for one when it's not guaranteed.
And it's named after the ability you're using. Strength check, dexterity check.
Yep. The source gives examples for each one. Strength for lifting, pushing, breaking things. Dexterity for sneaking, balancing, picking pockets. Constitution for pushing your physical limits, like holding your breath. Intelligence for remembering lore, reasoning, investigation. Wisdom for noticing things. Intuition, reading people. Charisma for persuading, deceiving, performing.
And this is where proficiency often applies. With skills.
Absolutely. If a specific skill or tool proficiency relates to the check and you have that proficiency, you add your proficiency bonus. The DM decides if it's relevant, like climbing a sheer cliff. That's probably a strength check. If you're proficient in the athletics skill, the DM might call for a strength athletics check. You add your bonus. You can still try without proficiency, you just don't get that bonus. The source even mentions sometimes you might use a skill with an unusual ability like strength intimidation if you're using brute force to scare someone. You still add your proficiency bonus if you have intimidation proficiency.
The target number for these is the difficulty class, the DC.
Right. Higher DC, harder task. The DM usually sets the DC based on the situation, though some rules give specific DCs. The source has a handy table of typical DCs. DC 5 is very easy, DC 10 is easy, DC 15 is medium, needs some skill, DC 20 is hard, DC 25-30 is very hard to come out, nearly impossible. Gives you a good sense of scale for what your character can realistically pull off.
Okay, that covers ability checks. What about saving throws? How are they different?
Saving throws, or saves, are reactive. They're about resisting something bad happening to your character. You don't usually choose to make one. You make one because you're caught in a dragon's breath, or exposed to poison gas, or targeted by a mind control spell. You're trying to avoid or lessen a harmful effect.
And the spell or effect tells you what happens if you succeed or fail to save. The source mentions you can choose to fail a save, though.
Yes, explicitly. Maybe you want to get caught in a friend's sleep spell to avoid something worse. It's an option. Like checks, saves are named for the ability used. Constitution save, wisdom save, etc. Different saves resist different things. Con saves often resist poison, disease, exhaustion. Dex saves are usually for dodging area effects. With saves, resist effects targeting your will or perception, like charm or fear spells.
So checks are active, you trying to do something. Saves are reactive, you resisting something being done to you. Both use the D20 test against a DC, adding your ability mod, and proficiency bonus if you're proficient in that specific save.
And speaking of proficiency, let's really zoom in on that. The source defines it clearly. It represents the impact of training. It's that mechanical bonus showing practiced skill.
Everyone has a proficiency bonus. Player characters start at +2 at level 1. It goes up as you level. You add this bonus whenever you make a D20 test using something you're proficient with.
And it applies in 3 main areas for characters: skills, saving throws, and equipment.
Skills seem like the most common one players interact with.
Yeah. If your character is proficient in a skill, Acrobatics, stealth, persuasion, whatever, you add your proficiency bonus to ability checks using that skill. Crucial point. Having a high dexterity is good, but without proficiency in stealth, you won't be as good at sneaking because you don't get that training bonus. Training enhances ability. And like we said, you might use a skill with an unusual ability score, like strength, intimidation, but you still add your bonus if you have intimidation proficiency.
Then saving through proficiencies.
Your class gives you proficiency in certain saves, reflects the kind of dangers that class trains to resist. Wizards might get intelligence and wisdom saves better against mental stuff. Barbarians might get strength and constitution, saves better at shrugging off physical effects. If you're proficient, you add your proficiency bonus to all saves of that type. Makes a big difference.
And finally, equipment proficiencies, weapons and tools.
With weapons, proficiency lets you add your proficiency bonus to attack rolls, makes you much more likely to hit. Without it, you're just using your strength or dexterity modifier. A fighter trained with a sword is going to hit way more often than a wizard picking one up for the first time.
And tools.
Tool proficiency lets you add your proficiency bonus to ability checks using that specific tool, like thieves' tools or an herbalism kit. And the source highlights this important interaction. If you're proficient in both the tool and a relevant skill for the check, you get advantage on that check. So picking a lock is a dexterity check using thieves' tools. If you have proficiency in both thieves' tools and the sleight of hand skill, you roll with advantage. That synergy represents real specialization.
That's a neat mechanic. Proficiency really defines what your character is good at, beyond just raw ability scores.
Okay, so we have the mechanics. How do they work in the flow of the game, especially when things get tense? Let's look at what you can actually do on your turn.
The basic idea is doing something significant, more than just moving or talking, usually takes an action.
That's the core of it. The source lists the main actions characters can take. While they can apply anytime, they're most clearly defined and used during combat rounds.
What are some of the key actions on that list?
Well, there's attack, probably the most common, hitting with a weapon or fist. Dash lets you use your action to move extra distance. Disengage means your movement for the rest of the turn doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. Dodge makes attacks against you have disadvantage, and you get advantage on dex saves. Magic is for casting spells or using magic items. Ready lets you set up an action to trigger later. Search is actively looking for something. Study is trying to recall lore or understand something. Utilize is for interacting with objects, opening doors, pulling levers, that kind of thing. There are others too, like help or hide.
That seems like a solid list for your main action, but there's also the bonus action, right?
Yes, bonus actions are special. You only get one if a specific rule, a class feature like the rogue's cunning action, a spell, a magic item, explicitly says you can do something as a bonus action. You don't just get one every turn automatically.
So if my rogue has cunning action, I can use my bonus action to disengage and then still use my main action to attack.
Exactly. That's the power of bonus actions doing something extra. But the source is clear. Only one bonus action per turn, even if you have multiple options. You decide when to use it during your turn, unless the rule says otherwise.
The source also mentions you can't really do conflicting things at once. Like you can't search for traps over here and simultaneously utilize action to bash a door over there.
Right. Your turn is a focus moment. Understanding your action, your potential bonus action, and your movement is crucial for being effective, especially in combat. People talk about action economy, managing these limited resources each turn. It's a really fundamental tactical concept.
Okay, let's see how these rules and the turn structure play out in the three main pillars of the game, starting with social interaction.
Social interaction is all about dealing with NPCs, non-player characters. Talking, persuading, intimidating, deceiving, instead of just fighting. The DM plays these characters.
The source mentions NPCs have an attitude. Friendly, indifferent, or hostile, kind of a quick gauge of how they feel about you.
Yeah, a mechanical shorthand. Friendly NPCs want to help, hostile ones want to hinder, indifferent are neutral. A lot of social play is about trying to shift that attitude, and these interactions happen through two main ways, often working together: role-playing and ability checks.
Role-playing is you being your character, what they say, how they act, their tone. The source encourages descriptive role-playing, describe emotions, body language, helps bring it to life.
And your role-playing matters. Being helpful, respectful, appealing to someone's values that can genuinely improve their attitude, make them more receptive. Being rude or threatening probably makes things worse.
But when the outcome is really uncertain or hangs in the balance, that's when ability checks come in, often using that influence action.
Correct. The DM might call for a check. Usually charisma-based persuasion, deception, intimidation, but maybe wisdom, insight to read someone's true feelings, or even strength intimidation if you're, smashing furniture for effect. The source suggests letting the character with the best relevant skill take the lead.
And the DC for that check can be affected by your role-playing and the NPC's starting attitude.
Exactly. Good role-playing, or if the NPC is already friendly, might lower the DC or even grant advantage. Bad role-playing or dealing with someone hostile might raise the DC or impose disadvantage. It connects the story part directly to the dice part.
The example in the source, the Blood on the Vine Tavern one, shows this perfectly. DM sets the scene, introduces Ismark Kolyanovich.
Players roleplay greetings, show him a letter. Then the DM asks for a wisdom, insight check. Insight being the skill for reading people. Ismark seems cagey looking around.
Then one player, Gareth, decides his character should show compassion. Ask about the vampire menace.
And that character choice, that role-playing beat, makes the DM call for a charisma, persuasion check with advantage, because Gareth's approach made Ismark friendly. The player rolls, gets a 10, adds modifiers for 15. But the source notes with advantage, the second die was a 17, making the total 22, a clear success.
And that success, born from role-playing leading to advantage, leads to Ismark whispering about Strahd biting his sister, Irina. The story moves forward because of that interaction.
It shows the rules supporting the narrative, not locking it. The players then ask how they can help, and the DM gives them a quest hook. Get Irina out of town. Connects the social scene to the larger adventure goals.
Okay, moving from talking to people to exploring the world. The exploration pillar. This covers moving around, searching, finding secrets.
Pretty much. Moving through environments, investigating places, interacting with the world to find stuff, traps, secret doors, treasure, clues, all that jazz.
How do you actually find hidden things? Is it always a check?
Often, yeah. Usually involves making a wisdom check, probably using the search action if you're actively looking. But the source points out sometimes you just stumble onto things through your actions, like the example of poking a fire. The DM decides if a check is needed or if interaction reveals something, and critically, you need to be near the hidden thing to find it with a check.
Vision and light seem really critical for exploration.
Absolutely fundamental for perception. Bright light, you see normally. Dim light, twilight, shadows, moonlight creates a lightly obscured area. In dim light, you have disadvantage on wisdom, perception checks relying on sight. Peering through gloom.
And darkness.
Much tougher. Darkness night, unlit dungeons, magic darkness creates a heavily obscured area. If you try to see in darkness, you effectively have the blinded condition. Means you auto-fail sight-based checks, attacks against you have advantage, and your attacks have disadvantage. Big penalties.
Unless you've got something like dark vision or blind sight, right? Special senses that negate some of that.
Exactly. Those special senses are key for exploring dark places. Hiding is also part of exploration. Possible, when the situation allows, DM's call, requires the hide action, which is a dexterity stealth check.
The source also mentions other exploration bits. Carrying capacity usually not tracked super closely unless it's extreme.
Yeah.
Breaking objects sometimes easy with utilized, sometimes needs rulings.
And hazards, dangers that aren't monsters. Things like burning, dehydration, falling, malnutrition, suffocation. Environmental threats you might face while exploring.
What about long-distance travel?
Often handled narratively by the DM, but if you track it, characters choose a pace. Normal, fast, or slow. And this choice has a direct mechanical effect, which is good to know. Fast pace, disadvantage on wisdom, perception, or survival checks. You're rushing, less aware. Slow pace, advantage on those checks. Cautious, observant, clear trade-off. Speed versus awareness.
Vehicles are covered too. Land vehicles follow pace rules. Water vehicles have set speeds, can potentially travel 24/7 with a crew.
The exploration example in the source is great, pulls a lot of this together. Adventurers exploring. DM describes a passage. Alcoves.
Player looks in alcoves, inquisitively searching. DM describes skeletons. Then, surprise. Skeletons animate. Transition to combat. But the discovery was exploration.
Then, classic D&D moment, another player randomly pokes the fire. Fireplace slides open. Hidden room revealed. Perfect example of finding something without a search check, just by interacting.
DM describes coins, chest, skeleton inside. Player asks about putting out the fire. Another player casts create or destroy water.
See, spell utility. Player knows the spell 10 gallons, 30-foot cube, perfect for dousing flames. Smart play.
DM narrates the fire going out, vision changes. Now relies on a glowing sword. Shadows deepen. Chest and skeleton still visible through smoke.
Player goes to the chest, tries to open it, asks if it's locked. DM says yes, then boom, DM calls for Constitution saving throws for 2 characters.
The hazard strikes. They fail their saves. DM describes toxic gas, chilling effect, stiffness. The paralyzed condition. Nasty.
That example is packed. Finding things deliberately or accidentally, spells being useful tools. Vision and light changing dynamically. Saving throws, resisting traps and hazards, leading to conditions, really shows exploration in action.
And from exploration, maybe triggering a trap, you can slide right into the third pillar. Combat.
Combat. The structured part when fighting breaks out. A round is about 6 seconds where everyone takes a turn. Fight goes round after round until one side wins, runs, surrenders, or whatever resolves it.
The source lays out the combat steps clearly. 1, establish positions. DM figures out where everyone is. 2, roll initiative. Dexterity check for everyone involved. Monsters too. DM might roll once for groups of identical monsters. This sets the turn order for the whole fight. 3, take turns. Go down the initiative list, highest first. Everyone acts. Round ends, start again at the top.
On your turn, you get your movement up to your speed in 1 action. You can move, then act, act, then move, or split movement around your action. Those main actions we listed, attack, dash, dodge, magic, etc., that's what you choose from.
Positioning matters. Creatures take up space, usually 5 by 5 feet for adventurers, important for movement, effects.
And the most common action, attack.
Taking the attack action lets you make 1 attack roll. How does that work again?
D20 test. Roll D20, add modifiers, usually strength or dexterity for the weapon, plus proficiency bonus if you're proficient with it, plus any situational stuff. Compare the total to the target's armor class, AC, meet or beat the AC, you hit.
And a hit means you roll damage.
Yep. Roll the weapon or spell's damage dice. Add relevant modifiers, like Street X again for weapons. And if your attack roll, the D20 itself was a natural 20, that's usually a critical hit.
Which means double damage dice.
Roll the damage dice twice, add them together, then add your normal damage modifiers once. Big hit potential.
Another key combat rule, opportunity attacks.
Ah, yes. That's a reaction you get. If an enemy moves out of your reach without being careful, you get a free swing at them as they leave. Punishes careless movement. You can avoid provoking one by using the disengage action first, or by teleporting, or if something else moves you.
The source mentions cover, affecting attacks too, giving AC bonuses or helping with saves.
And weapon properties. Listed in equipment, but vital for combat. Things like ammunition, finesse, use dex instead of snag, heavy, light for dual wielding, loading, limits attacks, reach, extra 5 feet, thrown, 2-handed, versatile, 1 or 2 hands, and the new mastery properties.
Those masteries are a big addition in 2024, aren't they? Nick, push, vex.
They are. They add tactical options when you hit, if you have the right weapon mastery feature. Nick might let you make a bonus action attack. Push lets you shove the target back. Vex gives an ally advantage on their next attack. Sap imposes disadvantage. Topple can knock prone. Graze deals chip damage on a near miss. Cleave lets you hit another target nearby. Adds a lot more choice to weapon selection beyond just damage.
The source also covers specific situations like mounted combat and underwater combat.
Yeah, rules for riding mounts cost to mount, dismount, controlling it versus it acting alone, falling off, and underwater fighting disadvantage on most melee attacks unless piercing, ranged attacks are less effective, resistance to fire damage, specifics for specific environments.
Okay, let's walk through that combat example from the source, the skeletons.
Right, DM describes skeletons animating. Everyone rolls initiative, skeletons roll high, 20, they go first.
Skeletons move, attack Shreve and Oro, they hit, deal piercing damage, standard stuff.
Then a skeleton attacks Mirabella, hits her AC. But Mirabella uses her reaction, casts the shield spell, AC bumps up. The attack now misses. Great example of a reaction spell turning a hit into a miss.
More skeletons attack Gareth, 1 hits, last skeleton moves, waits. Then it's Oro's turn, the first player.
Oro attacks a skeleton, rolls high, hits easily, mentions she's next to an ally, so she gets her sneak attack damage, big damage spike, skeleton goes down.
Then Oro uses cunning action, her rogue bonus action feature, to disengage. Then she moves away safely, no opportunity attacks, perfect use of action, bonus action, and movement.
Shreve's turn. They drop their sword, pull out a warhammer, maybe using their action. Depends on exact item interaction rules. Attacks. Hits. Bludgeoning damage. Second attack misses. Shows switching weapons mid-combat.
Next up, Mirabella. She checks the area for Thunderwave 15-foot cube. Carefully positions it to hit 3 skeletons. Avoid her ally. Smart positioning.
Cast Thunderwave using a level 2 slot. Skeletons need Constitution saves. They all fail. Badly.
So they take the thunder damage, and it's extra damage because she used a higher slot. Illustrates upcasting, and they get pushed 10 feet back. shattered by the blast. Great area effect spell example, forcing saves, using higher slots.
Last player, Gareth. Checks range, casts a spell using his holy symbol, calling on Pelor. Skeletons need wisdom saves. DM rolls, they all fail again.
Gareth narrates the radiant damage. DM describes them vanishing in light bursts. Combat over. Shows the whole flow initiative. Actions, reactions, attacks, saves, damage type, spell slots, positioning. Really comprehensive example.
Combat often means taking damage. So the source covers injury, healing, conditions, and the big one, dropping to 0 hit points.
Hit points HP. Measure durability, will to live. You have a max, current HP goes down with damage. Down to 0.
Damage comes from attacks, spells, traps, usually roll dice. Critical hits, as we said, roll damage dice twice, then add modifiers.
The source details resistance, vulnerability, immunity. Key defensive mechanics.
Resistance halves damage of a specific type. Fire, cold, etc. Vulnerability doubles it. Immunity means 0 damage of that type. Important rule. They don't stack. Multiple sources of fire resistance. Still just half damage, not quarter.
And there's a specific order for applying them with other modifiers.
Yes, worth noting. Apply flat adjustments first, like a bonus or penalty. Then apply resistance half. Then apply vulnerability double, the example. 28 fire damage, -5 penalty. Resistance to all damage, vulnerability to fire, -5 first. 23. Resistance halves it, 11, round down usually. Vulnerability doubles it, 22. You take 22 damage. Immunity just overrides everything, makes damage 0.
Healing brings HP back up.
Comes from magic spells, potions, or resting, short or long. Add the HP gained, but can't go over your max HP.
What happens when current HP hits 0?
For most monsters, usually instant death. DM can say otherwise. For player characters, usually fall unconscious. But there's that instant death rule. If damage drops you to 0 and there's enough leftover damage to equal or exceed your max HP, you die instantly. Max HP 20, at 5 HP, take 25 damage, you're gone.
If you hit 0 HP but aren't instantly killed, that's when death saving throws start.
Right. The dramatic struggle for life. Start your turn at 0 HP, make a death save, roll a d20, no modifiers, 10 or higher, 1 success, 9 or lower, 1 failure, keep track.
How many do you need?
3 successes before 3 failures means you become stable. You stop making saves, but you're still unconscious at 0 HP. 3 failures, you die. Successes and failures clear if you regain HP or become stable. Rolling a 1 on the d20 counts as 2 failures. Ouch. Rolling a 20, you regain 1 HP immediately. Back in the fight, sort of.
Taking damage while at 0 HP is also bad.
Very bad. Take any damage at 0 HP. Suffer 1 death save failure automatically. If the damage was from a critical hit, suffer 2 failures. And remember, the instant death rule applies here too. Massive damage at 0 HP can kill you outright.
Allies can help stabilize you, though.
Yeah. Use the help action. Make a DC 10 Wisdom Medicine check. Success means the target is stable. Stops making death saves, stays unconscious, recovers 1 HP after 104 hours unless healed sooner. Taking damage makes them unstable again.
Temporary hit points were mentioned too, like a buffer.
Exactly. An extra layer on top of your real HP. Damage hits temporary HP first. Key rule. They don't stack. If you get more, you just take the higher amount, don't add them.
And finally, conditions. Lots of those.
Conditions are specific negative states. Blinded, charmed, deafened, exhaustion, frightened, grappled, incapacitated, invisible, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, restrained, stunned, unconscious. List goes on. Each has specific rules effects. Like resistance, same condition from multiple sources, doesn't stack, just have the condition once. They last for a duration or until removed.
These rules for damage, death, healing, conditions, they add real stakes. Tactical depth.
Okay, shifting gears. From the rules of play to creating the character who uses them. Chapter 2. Building your hero.
This is where you make your avatar for the D&D world, combining rules-based building blocks with your own imagination. Choosing class, background, species. Inventing personality, appearance. It's your character.
The source stresses talking to your DM first. What kind of campaign is it? Helps you make a character concept that fits the tone, the setting, the challenges. You know, a sneaky rogue might feel out of place in an all-out war campaign, maybe. Unless that's the interesting angle.
It also mentions session 0. Common practice now.
Yeah, lots of groups do it. A session before play starts, just for character creation, talking about expectations, setting ground rules, helps get everyone on the same page. The handbook gives a clear step-by-step process, usually matches the sections on a character sheet. 1. Choose a class. 2. Determine origin, background, species, languages. 3. Determine ability scores. 4. Choose an alignment. 5. Fill in details, HP, AC, etc.
Step 1. Choose a class. called the most important decision.
Yeah, it defines so much about what your character does. Shapes later choices. The source lists the 12 core classes. Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard.
There's that helpful class overview table, too. Shows primary ability for each and a complexity rating: low, average, high.
Right. Gives you a quick idea of how much tracking is involved. Fighter. Low complexity, uses strength or dexterity. Simpler to start with. Bard. High complexity, uses charisma. Lots of spells, bardic inspiration, more moving parts. Source notes, each class has 4 subclasses, offering different flavors. Classes also give you things like armor training, proficiencies we talked about. If you start at a higher level, you usually pick your subclass right away.
Step 2. Determine origin. Combines background, species, and languages.
Backgrounds are really significant in this edition. They give you benefits, influence, ability scores, grant proficiencies, starting gear, story hooks about your past. There's a table suggesting which abilities fit well with which backgrounds. Helps align with your class choice.
And backgrounds grant a feat now. That's big.
Key change, yeah. Every background gives you a feat, either a specific one or lets you choose an origin feat from a starting list. Gives every character a unique ability right off the bat. Backgrounds also give proficiency in 2 skills and 1 tool. More train abilities.
Then species.
Your fundamental type. Human, dragonborn, gnome. The source mentions lots of sapient life forms exist across the multiverse. Each species usually comes with its own traits.
And languages.
You typically get 2, usually common, plus another determined by species or background, or chosen from a list. Common, rarer ones, exotic ones like abyssal, celestial, primordial. Depends on the setting. Okay, after class and origin, step 3 is figuring out ability scores.
The source mentions 3 ways to get your 6 numbers for strength, dex, con, int, whiz, cha. Your DM decides which method: rolling dice, standard array, or point buy.
Once you have the 6 numbers, you assign them where you want. The source gives suggested assignments for each class as a starting point.
Then you adjust those scores based on your background choice.
Correct. Your background lists 3 abilities. You pick one of those 3, increase it by 2. Pick another of the 3, increase by 1. Or you can increase all 3 listed abilities by 1 each. Can't push a score past 20 at this stage, though.
After those adjustments, you calculate your ability modifiers using that table we discussed earlier. The +1, +2, -1, etc. That's what you'll actually use most often.
Step 3 also nudges you to describe appearance and personality. Maybe link them to your scores. High con might mean looking sturdy, tireless. Low con, maybe frail or sickly. Helps flesh out the character beyond the numbers.
Step 4. Choose an alignment.
Alignment, the shorthand for moral and ethical outlook. The source does mention player characters are usually not evil. Suggest talking to the DM if you want to play an evil character, as it can sometimes cause group friction.
And it's based on 2 axes, right?
Yeah. Morality, good, evil, or neutral. An attitude toward order, lawful, chaotic, or neutral. Combine them, you get the 9 alignments, often shown as a grid.
How should you think about them?
Lawful types value order, rules, tradition. Lawful good uses rules for good. Lawful evil uses them for selfish gain. Lawful neutral just values order itself. Chaotic types value freedom, individuality. Chaotic good seeks freedom for all. Chaotic evil seeks freedom to destroy. Chaotic neutral just follows whims. Neutral characters are in the middle. Maybe balancing good devil, neutral good evil, or just pragmatic valuing balance, true neutral. It's a guideline, not a rigid box. Helps you play consistently.
The final step, step 5. Fill in the details, using all those choices to finalize your character sheet.
Right, calculating derived stats like passive perception.
What's that used for again?
It's your baseline awareness when you're not actively searching. The DM uses it to see if you notice things automatically. Formula is 10 plus your wisdom perception modifier. Include your proficiency bonus in that modifier if you're proficient in perception. If the DC to spot something is lower than or equal to your passive perception, the DM might just tell you that you notice it.
You also calculate hit points.
Level 1 max HP. Your class's hit point maximum, the top number on its hit die, plus your constitution modifier. Source has a table. Barbarian 12 plus con, Fighter Paladin Ranger 10 plus con, Bard Cleric Druid Monk Rogue Warlock 8 plus con, Sorcerer Wizard 6 plus con, track current HP, temp HP, death saves.
Hit point dice or hit dice?
Your class sets the die type, D12, D10, etc. At level 1, you have 1 hit die. You spend these during short rests to heal. Track how many you have, how many are spent.
Initiative and armor class get calculated too.
Initiative is just your dexterity modifier. Symbol determines turn order. Base armor class is 10 plus your dexterity modifier if you're unarmored with no shield. AC changes a lot based on armor shield you wear, considering their base AC, dex mod interaction, and needing armor training to get the benefit and avoid penalties.
If you're a spellcaster, there are spellcasting details to fill in.
Yep. Calculate your spell save DC, how hard it is to resist your spells, and your spell attack modifier, bonus to hit with spell attacks. Formulas are based on 8, plus your spellcasting ability modifier, in for wizards, chaw for sorks, etc., plus your proficiency bonus for the DC, and spellcasting mod, plus proficiency bonus for the attack mod. Your class table tells you slots per level, cantrips known, spells prepared, if any.
The source also mentions multi-class spellcasting rules. Can get tricky.
A bit, yeah. If you get spellcasting from multiple classes, you figure out your total slots differently. You add up levels from different classes. Modified full casters count fully. Half casters like paladins, rangers count as half. Third casters count as a third. Then look up that total level on a special multi-class spellcaster table to find your slots.
The example is a level 4 ranger, level 3 sorcerer. Counts as level 5 for slots. Ranger 4, 2 plus sorcerer 3 was 5.
Exactly. It makes multi-classing work, though you often get total slots slower than a single class. But importantly, you can use those higher-level slots for lower-level spells, potentially boosting their effects if the spell allows it, like Cure Wounds or Magic Missile.
So building your hero is this structured process. Layering abilities, training, background species, creating someone unique for the game.
Once the hero is built, they need gear. The source details weapons, armor, tools, and general adventuring stuff.
Anyone can swing a sword, but proficiency is what makes you good at it.
Precisely. Need proficiency to add your proficiency bonus to attack rolls. Weapons fall into simple, easier, more classes get them. And martial need training, melee or ranged. The weapons table lists damage, dice, type, weight, cost, and those crucial properties. Finesse, heavy, light, loading, reach, thrown, two-handed, versatile.
And those new mastery properties again?
Yep, the mastery column shows nick, push, vex, sap, topple, graze, cleave. Tactical benefits on a hit if you have the right weapon mastery feature. Adds another layer to weapon choice.
Armor is similar. Need training to use it well.
Armor training, from your class usually, lets you use light, medium, heavy armor, or shields effectively. Wear armor you're not trained in. Disadvantage on Stridex checks, can't cast spells, don't get AC bonus from shields, big penalties.
Categories are light, medium, heavy, shields.
Armor table shows AC, how it combines base AC and dex mod. Strength requirements for heavy armor, stealth disadvantage possibility, weight, cost. Only one suit of armor, one shield at a time. There's an optional rule for equipment sizes too. Adjusting armor might cost extra.
Tools are for specific tasks, crafting.
Tool proficiency adds your proficiency bonus to checks using the tool. And remember that synergy, proficiency in the tool and a relevant skill gives advantage. Source lists artisans' tools, alchemy, thieves' tools, and other tools, navigator's kit, poisoner's kit. Give sample DCs for uses like DC 15 thieves' tools to pick a standard lock, mentions crafting possibilities.
And then just general adventuring gear. Lots of useful bits and pieces.
Huge table. Source highlights a few. Crowbar gives advantage on strength checks needing leverage. Healer's Kit has 10 uses, lets you stabilize someone at 0 HP with utilize action without needing a medicine check. Caltrops or hunting trap can be set to create hazards. Magnifying glass gives advantage on inspection checks. Holy water deals extra damage to fiends undead. Shows gear isn't just weapons armor, it's problem-solving tools. Beyond your backpack, the source covers getting around and living. Mounts, vehicles, services.
Mounts for travel, carrying stuff.
Mounts table lists horses, mules, camels, etc. Shows carrying capacity, cost. You can get barding, armor for mounts, 4x cost, 2x weight. Saddles too, military saddle gives advantage to stay mounted. Tack, harnesses, drawn vehicles like carts, wagons are listed too.
What about bigger transport ships? Airships, maybe.
Source includes an airborne and waterborne vehicles table. Lists things like sailing ships, galleys, shows speed affected by wind, current rowing, crew needed, passenger capacity, different costs for comfort, maybe a damage threshold, even rules for ship repair, time and gold costs per hit point repaired, cheaper in a proper shipyard, adds detail for campaigns involving travel.
And then the cost of just living. Services, lifestyle expenses.
Lifestyle expenses, abstract daily costs, lodging, food, upkeep. You choose a lifestyle weekly or monthly, wretched, free, up to aristocratic, 10 GP day.
These have narrative effects too.
Yeah. Wretched means danger, probably bad reputation. Aristocratic is expensive, but offers comfort, contacts, safety. DM can weave it into the story. Source also lists specific food and drink costs, travel cost for hiring crew or drivers. Adds that economic layer.
Provides a framework for the money side of adventuring, beyond just buying gear.
And beyond mundane gear, there are magic items and crafting rules.
Magic items, the cool stuff. How do you figure them out?
Best way. Identify spell. No magic. Spend a short rest focusing on the item, catching it. Learn its properties, how to use it. Doesn't reveal curses, though. Hints might be on the item, or you learn by, well, trying it. Drink the potion, wear the ring, see what happens.
Some items need attunement.
Right. A special bond needed to use the magical properties of certain items. Also takes a short rest, focused on the item, touching it. Big limit. Only 3 attuned items max at a time. Design choice to prevent stacking too many powerful effects. Without attunement, you only get non-magical benefits, like a magic shield's base AC.
So attunement unlocks the real magic. What about making stuff? Crafting.
Source covers crafting non-magical items, potions of healing, and spell scrolls. Non-magical stuff needs tools, materials, time. Must be proficient with the tool.
And proficiency helps here too.
Yep, proficiency in a relevant skill gives advantage on the crafting check. Time and cost are usually tied to the item's price. Lets players make basic gear or consumables with downtime and resources. Another layer of gameplay.
Okay, a huge source of power in D&D. Spellcasting. Whole chapter on fundamentals.
Spells. Versatile magic. Huge list available. Arcane, divine, primal power sources.
Organized by spell levels, right? Cantrips and leveled spells.
Yep. Cantrips are level 0. Simple stuff, cast by rote, no spell slot needed. Level 1+ spells are more powerful, more taxing. Require spending a spell slot of that level or higher.
Casters have a limited number of slots per level.
Correct. Your class tells you how many slots of each level you get back after a rest, usually long rest. A level 3 wizard might have 4 first-level slots, 2 second-level slots, finite resource.
But you can cast some spells without using slots.
Yes, cantrips, always. Ritual spells with the ritual tag can be cast taking 10+ minutes longer, no slot used if you have it prepared known, and the ritual casting feature. Some special abilities grant spell casting, and magic items like spell scrolls.
What about using a higher level slot than the spell needs?
The spell becomes that higher level, key flexibility mechanic. Some spells, like Magic Missile, Cure Wounds, Thunderwave, get better when cast with a higher slot. Enhanced effects, more damage, more targets. Detailed in the spell description, you get that boost.
Spells belong to schools of magic, too. Abjuration, evocation.
8 schools. Abjuration, conjuration, divination, enchantment, evocation, illusion, necromancy, transmutation. Describe the spell's function. Source says they're mostly descriptive categories now, though other rules might refer to them sometimes.
Casting a spell takes time. Casting time.
Most take the magic action, uses your main action. Some are bonus actions, some reaction. Reaction spells have specific triggers, like shield. Longer casting times, 1 minute plus. Need your action each turn. Concentration. Spell fails. Slot wasted if concentration breaks.
And generally only 1 leveled spell per turn.
That's the rule. If you cast a spell as a bonus action, your action can only be used to cast a cantrip if it also has a 1-action casting time. Prevents firing off multiple big spells at once.
Range is obviously important.
Tells you where the effect originates. Feet, touch, self. Need a clear path to the target. Generally can't target through total cover. Usually you can target yourself. Area of effect spells, cone, cube, sphere, line, define the space affected, hitting targets within.
Spells have components too. V, S, M.
Physical requirements. Verbal speaking. Somatic S gestures, need a free hand. Material M objects. Some consumed, some have a cost, must be provided.
Can you substitute for materials? With a focus?
Usually, yes. If the material component isn't consumed and doesn't have a specific gold cost listed, you can use a component pouch or a spellcasting focus instead, if your class allows. Need a free hand for the pouch or focus, unless it's worn. Streamlines things so you don't track every feather and bit of fleece.
What about knowing you've been targeted by a spell?
Source says, not automatically. Unless the spell has an obvious effect, lightning bolt. A subtle spell like reading thoughts might go unnoticed. Interesting bit. If you target something invalid, immune, wrong type, the spell slot is still used, and it might look like they saved if the spell normally does nothing on a save. No clue they were immune or invalid.
That's a really thorough look at the spellcasting engine. Lots of interlocking parts.
Okay, last stop on our deep dive, the backdrop for everything, the D&D multiverse.
The source makes it clear. D&D worlds aren't isolated. They're part of a huge multiverse, connected to each other and other planes of existence.
Some are official settings we know. Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, where the book examples are set. Dragonlance, Spelljammer, Planescape, Dark Sun, Eberron, Ravenloft. Iconic places.
But thousands more exist too, right? Homebrew worlds made by players.
Exactly. Worlds might share basics, but each has unique history, geography, gods, cosmology. Always check with your DM about the specific world you're playing in.
And there are different kinds of planes in this multiverse.
Yep, few main types described. Transitive planes, paths between others. The astral plane. Silvery sea linking material and outer planes. Place for Githyanki cities, spell-jamming ships. The ethereal plane. Foggy dimension bordering others, allowing glimpses across.
Then the inner planes, elemental forces.
Elemental planes of air, earth, fire, water, boundless sky, endless rock, raging inferno, bottomless ocean, where they clash. The elemental chaos. Border regions are para-elemental planes, ash, ice, magma, ooze, realms of raw elements.
And finally, the outer planes, tied to alignments, big cosmic ideas.
These are often the most story-rich. Source lists examples tied to the alignment grid: the Abyss, chaotic evil demons; the Nine Hells, lawful evil devils; Mount Celestia, lawful good angels; Limbo, chaotic neutral chaos. Each embodies its alignment. Elysium, neutral good; Hades, neutral evil; Mechanus, lawful neutral clockwork.
The Outlands is the neutral one, with Sigil, the city of doors, at its center.
Right. Sigil is a major hub, theoretically connecting everywhere. These outer planes are described as heavens, hells, strange dimensions, populated by creatures embodying their nature: devils, angels, demons, modrons. Huge potential for adventures about cosmic wars, gods, philosophy made real.
It really paints this picture of an unbelievably vast stage for adventures, way beyond just one world.
Gives DMs and players infinite places to draw inspiration from. Morality, law versus chaos, the elements. It's all out there.
Okay, phew. We have taken quite the deep dive into these Players Handbook 2024 excerpts.
We really have. We went from the 50-year history and that core rules serve fun idea through the basic play loop, the dice and abilities engine, how turns and actions work, and how social stuff, exploration and combat actually use those mechanics.
We looked at building your adventure step by step. Class, origin, abilities, alignment, all the character sheet details, even how multi-class spellcasting slots work.
Covered the gear, too. Weapons. Those new mastery properties, armor, tools, mounts, vehicles, cost of living, how to ID and attune magic items, basic crafting.
And finished with a glimpse of the D&D multiverse, the different planes providing that epic backdrop.
It's definitely a comprehensive framework. Refined, builds on the past, adds some new tactical depth. The rules provide that solid structure.
All the imagination, players, DMs, that fills in the infinite possibilities, the story, the surprises within that structure. Like the source says right at the start, use only the rules that serve your fun and always follow your group's bliss. Powerful reminder of where the real magic happens.
That philosophy really is central. Rules are tools, not masters.
So here's a final thought for you, building on that. If the rules give us the structure and imagination gives us the content, what kind of unexpected stories or characters or, encounters might be waiting just off the beaten path? Maybe in the corners the rulebook doesn't fully detail, or out there in the weirder planes. What could your group bring to life purely through collaboration and creativity, maybe pushing those boundaries a little?
Definitely something to think about. As you build that next character, roll those dice and head out on your next adventure.
Until the next deep dive.